Hey guys, how's it going? It's Baggins here, and today we're going to be talking about some named items that you can farm solo to increase your gear score, make your character more powerful, and hopefully get yourselves ready to do some dungeons if you feel so inclined. Now, for those of you who don't know, Amazon introduced a system with the Brimstone Sands where if you get a named item, so it's these like shiny glowy things, they will always be 590 gear score, regardless of your like expertise or your own like sort of personal gear score that you've received in the past. An example of this that I could show is with my bow. So my bow expertise is 529. So if I was to go into the trading post and buy myself, you know, what looked to be a decent bow, so let's go over here and go here. Not only would I get scammed and have to pay 500 gold, which is, God, I don't even, we haven't even looked at the bow. It's probably not worth it. Yep, it's definitely not worth it. But also when I equip the bow, you'll see that the gear score gets like scaled down a little bit as well because my expertise isn't there. But with these named items, they come in and you get the full value of it. So this is actually only 564 gear score. It's also pretty damn bad, as we mentioned, but we have something like the Warden's Answer here, and this doesn't get scaled down, it's just 590. And when we get to 600 expertise, we can upgrade it with Umbral Shards as well. If you guys want more on that, I'll link a video up in the top right on, you know, how the end game works in New World and stuff that you can do. But the point that I'm trying to make here is these named items can be pretty damn useful. And it turns out there's quite a few of them, like this one, that you can go out and farm solo. You know, you can kill a boss with about 30,000 HP, and after a few attempts of killing it, it will drop a pretty decent piece of loot, generally across the board. This exists for every weapon. Now, the way we're going to lay out this video is we'll go through like weapons first, then we'll do armor, and then we'll do jewelry. So if there's something in particular you guys are interested in, you'll be able to scrub along in the video and find it down there. We're also going to have a written version of this guide available as well, because I think that might be more useful, especially on New World Database, which is where we used like all of the research for this video for. And I'll actually talk about at the end of the video how I found where all these items come from, so you guys can sort of go and do your own research and maybe find something you can farm yourself. But 3 quick notes that I wanted to drop before we started this video. These items are not necessarily going to be best in slot. Some of them are pretty damn good, but a lot of them you are going to replace with dungeon loot later on. The concept here is that I know a lot of you guys like to solo and chill in New World, and maybe you're finding dungeons or group play a little bit intimidating. So if you do just want to play solo and get some good gear for yourself, and then maybe look to move into those dungeons later on, that's what this video is about. So it's not going to be best in slot stuff. It's not going to be better than like crafted gear that you can potentially make, but it's going to be a pretty good starting point. The other thing that I want to mention, and it's specifically on the weapon front, is that you should do your quests in Brimstone Sands. There's actually a lot of really nice legendary items that you can get that don't scale down to your gear score. For example, we've got the Discerning Eye here, and because it's a quest reward, we just get it full in at 615 gear score with all of the perks enabled. So you can get stuff like that just by doing basically all of your quests in Brimstone. Specifically, the main storyline has some pretty good stuff, but a lot of these side quests in Brimstone Sands will give you some pretty awesome weapons. Like I use this Void Gauntlet and Lifestaff combo here for a good chunk of when I hit level 60, and I would recommend that you guys do the same. Now, the third and final thing that I want to say is we have excluded some items like this one here. This is Dark Vengeance. It is a really good Void Gauntlet. It is a named item, and it does drop in the open world. So you might be saying, well, Baggins, why have you not included this in the solo list of farmable items? And that's because it's not really farmable. You can see down here, it drops from 1,223 different enemies, and also comes from 70 different chests in the game. It's very hard to specifically target this item. So the items that we're going to be showing in this video drop specifically from one boss, and they have like a proven track record of dropping pretty consistently. Right, so with that all out of the way, let's actually jump in and begin this guide, shall we? So as I mentioned, there is a written version available. You'll be able to find it on New World Database, and hopefully it'll look a lot less ugly than what I've whipped together here, but this is for like my own video show notes. But I've made links that you can click on. Again, it'll be on New World Database, and you'll be able to go through to the item, and we can take a look at what I've selected here. So starting with the sword category, we have Guardian's Resolve, and if we go down to this dropped by section down here, we can click on the enemy and then find where that enemy is on the map. So we have Rafik of Bishara, and I think what I'll do in the video is overlay some footage of me like sort of roughly going to the area and killing the boss, so you can kind of see what that looks like. Now, Guardian's Resolve, as we mentioned, is a pretty solid tank sword and also a DPS sword for those of you playing Sword and Shield in like a DPS mode. It comes with Refreshing Move and Corrupted Bane, and when you upgrade it to 600 gear score, you also get Thwarting Strike. So definitely an all-round good sword. It's got Strength and Dex, which might be not ideal if you're looking for the pure strength and constitution builds that we see a lot of tanks go for, but all in all, it is pretty damn good, and it's very easily like farmable in my opinion. The next sword we're going to take a look at is the Pit Lord Dominator, and I think at this point I'm just going to take my camera off the screen because it's kind of getting in the way of stuff. So you can see this one has Constitution, Mortal Lifesteal, and Lifestealing, so we've got a bit of like an alternative option here to the previous sword that we saw, and this one comes from Pit Lord Dahai, and he is located in Shattered Mountain. So again, hopefully, if I'm not too lazy, we'll have some footage on the screen here of me killing this mob, so you can see, you know, confirm that you are killing the right mob. But yeah, but the Pit Lord Dominator seems to be like a pretty good all-rounder option. Mortal Lifesteal is not great, but it is something that you could sort of use as like a springboard to, you know, catapult yourself into future gear when you can get yourselves into Lazarus, Tempest Heart, so on and so forth. Now moving on to shields, because I think we're spending so much time on each category. There is only a limited number of drops that I find that are actually like pretty good in each category, so we don't want to cover everything you can go for. Instead, we're going to go in for like personal recommendations based on what perks I think are good. So yeah, like I say, starting with shields, we're going to look at Titan Wall is a tower shield, so this is going to be good for tanks, and I think this is the best sort of named item that you can get open world as a tank, and it has Refreshing Ward, Sturdy, and Fortifying Shield Rush, and it drops from Titanic Saturn, that one, and he is available in the Brimstone Sands just in this region here. So again, hopefully we'll have some footage overlaid at the top of me fighting Titanic Saturnianus, that guy. And yeah, he should have a pretty good tower shield that you can get to drop called Titan Wall. Now, I wasn't really sure whether to include this because I'm not sure how popular round shield builds are out there, but if you do want to rock a round shield, there's not that many good options. Matt Scale seems to be the best, and this comes from the Judge of Purity, who is located again in the Brimstone Sands, and you can find the Judge of Purity and the Judge of Sin both looking at each other in this sort of rough area. One quick note I want to make with round shields is you want to have it so that the perks you have here, you don't have those perks on your sword, so you can kind of combine and have 6 perk slots in total. If you have Vicious and Enchanted on your sword somehow, then you could have Keen and Keenly Empowered on the shield and sort of merge all of those perks together to create like a mega combination of like huge DPS build. Moving on to the Rapier, we have Putrid Fishbone. I think this is a pretty solid set of perks, honestly, on this Rapier. Keenly Jagged, Enchanted, and Keen. So we don't have any Corrupted Bane, but it does drop from a really easy mob to farm. It's called Putris, and it's a little alligator that you find here in Reekwater. Only 5k HP or less than 5k HP on this thing, so it should be very easy to solo farm, provided you can make your way in there. Next up, we have Hatchets. Now, I'm going to be honest, there isn't really that much in the way of good Hatchets out there. It was hard for me to find a named Hatchet that dropped in the open world that was reliably solo farmable. This is the best that we came up with here. It's called Bone Chopper. It has Angry Earthbane, Keenly Fortified, and it upgrades to get Rogue at 600 gear score, so definitely worth the upgrade. And it drops in the Strangle Pitch Road area. So if we click on the mobs here, we can see that Strangle Pitch Road is located up in this sort of top left of the map here. Now, I'll show some footage of me farming mobs in this area. However, I do think this is going to be a bit more of a difficult one to target farm, so you might want to look to buy or craft something here rather than going for this particular farm. But that's a quick look at Bone Chopper, and again, we'll have this guide in the description down below if you need to just sort of go through and click on the links yourself. Moving on to Greatswords, we got some pretty good options here. The first one is the Knife of God, which has Corrupted Bane, Keenly Empowered, and the third perk that it upgrades with is Trenchant Rend. This one drops from Tribune. I'm not even going to say the name, but he is located in the Brimstone Sands over here. You can find him in the tent. I can confirm I've had the Knife of God drop quite a few times for myself, and it's not a bad sword. However, one alternative I also wanted to present is Jupiter's Judgment. It doesn't have Corrupted Bane, so it is a bit more of an all-rounder. It contains Keen and Mortal Power, and then the third perk it upgrades with is Trenchant Rend, so obviously you'll get the 590 gear score of all of these weapons with only 2 perks, but the third perk you'll get it when you get to 600 expertise and upgrade with the Umbral Shards. This one drops from a mob with a good chunk of HP here, so you're going to have to be a bit more careful farming this mob, but again, footage on the screen, you can see kind of what the fight looks like. It is going to be one of the tougher ones to go for, but I do think this is still a fight that you can go for solo, provided you got potions and a little bit of sort of your wits about you. Now moving on to Warhammers, and in my opinion, best in slot for the Warhammer does include Sundering Shockwave as a perk. and unfortunately there are no good Warhammers that drop that are solo farmable with Sundering Shockwave, but the closest that we could find that I would recommend, at least for tanks, is this one here. So as Trenchant Strikes and Ancient Bane, third perk upgrades is with Mortal Power, and you can get this from the Colossus of Karnak, who sounds pretty spooky, but they're located in the wall over here, and I do think it is something that, again, you can solo farm for. One other honorable mention that I want to go for, and it's not really a solo farm, but it is a Warhammer you can craft, and it has Sundering Shockwave, Chain Void, and Keenly Empowered, and because it's a craftable, it won't get downscaled to your expertise. But you are going to need 200 weaponsmithing in order to make this bad boy. With Greataxes, there's surprisingly not that many good drops that you can get out there named solo. This was the best I could come up with. It has Refreshing Ward, Thwarting Strikes, and then of course the third upgrade at the bottom there for 600 gear score is Keenly Empowered. This one drops from Primus Galba, who is located in the Brimstone Sands, as with a lot of the enemies that you'll find in this guide. And yeah, I think it's a pretty easy solo farm. Not the best Great Axe, but it is something, you know, to start you on your journey into the end game. Now, just like with the Great Axe, there is not that many great spears you can find out there. One of the best, I think, that's available, again, with this specific criteria for the video of solo farm boss drops is Knum's Key. It has Keen Speed, Rogue, and the third perk is Ancient Bane. Rogue is pretty good for DPS, so you can make sure you go for those backstabs, and it drops from Keeper Knum, who again is located in the Brimstone Sands, and I think is a fairly easy solo farm. So yeah, maybe not the best spear, but it is something you can pick up again to get that journey into endgame going. However, I would recommend that you again do those Brimstone Sands quests, because the 5th Cohort's March is a quest reward you can get here, and it's pretty good as well. Keenly Fortified, Enchanted. Rogue is maybe a little bit better for the backstab damage, but it's 610 gear score, so just again bear in mind that there are some pretty good weapon rewards that you can get from Brimstone, provided you do the quests. Firestaff wise, we had to go for a bit of a weird one here as well. There's just not that many great Firestaffs that drop solo open world. We have Signum Falare, I think maybe is how I would say it. Sounds like a Harry Potter spell. It's got Chain Lightning and Vicious, and the third perk it upgrades to is with Keen, and it drops from Corrupted Exubator Luca, who is located in the Shattered Mountain. But again, just like with the Spear and the Great Axe, there is a good Firestaff, or a reasonably good Firestaff that you can get from doing quests in the Brimstone Sands. It has Vicious, Mortal Refreshment, and Refreshing Pillar of Fire, and just comes in at 615 gear score, so please bear that one in mind as well. Now, there is a pretty nice Ice Gauntlet available as a drop in the open world. It is Frozen Hope. It has Unending Thaw, Trenchant Crits, and third perk at 600 gear score, Mortal Power, and it drops from Aphois the Joyful. Now, this guy is a bit of a pain in the butt to farm. You got to be very careful and make sure you dodge his big attacks, but I have taken him down a few times myself, and I can confirm that it's a pretty solid Ice Gauntlet, at least, you know, again, with the bearing in mind it's something to get you started on your journey into, like, end game best in slot. Now, moving on to Void Gauntlets. The first Void Gauntlet we're going to cover is a Healing Void Gauntlet. Now, it obviously has Intelligence on, so it's not, like, best in slot, but it's got Blessed, which is important. That's the criteria that we need for our Healing Void Gauntlets, and the third perk it upgrades with is Lifestealing. Also, Ancient Bane means it's not too bad to take into Lazarus in order to start farming that expertise up. It drops from Daoshen the Unstoppable, who is also located in Shattered Mountain. And interestingly enough, Daoshen does have a few other, like, fairly decent drops in here as well, so a good one to farm and something that you can definitely do solo. For DPS Void Gauntlets, I've opted to recommend Disintegrating Depths. This is a Focus Intelligence Void Gauntlet, so again, not ideal, but it's got Corrupted Bane and Enchanted, so this is going to be a great one to bring into Tempest Heart, and potentially even Mutated the Depths Dynasty and Mutated Tempest if you do want to upgrade it with Umbral Shards. It comes with Corrupted Bane, Enchanted, third perk Mortal Lifesteal, and it drops from Pit Lord Dahi, who we're going to see quite a few times throughout this guide, and he has just under 30k HP, so should again be a pretty easy farm. Now, on the healing side of things, with Lifestaffs, we have Tide of Moonlight. This drops with Blessed, Refreshing Divine Embrace, and the third perk is Corrupted Bane, and it drops from this dude who is in the Brimstone Sands located up at the north. But one thing I will say is, whilst you're trying to farm this guy, bear in mind that there is also a Lifestaff that you can get really early on. We showed it at the start of the video, and that is Oread's Anger, and this has Blessed, Refreshing Move, and Mortal Refreshment. So it doesn't have a weapon perk, and there is some advantages, especially if you're running Refreshing Divine Embrace, to go for the Tide of Moonlight. But Oread's Anger is a very solid Lifestaff, and I would encourage you, most healers, to go for this one instead. With Blunderbusses, it was pretty hard to find something that I could recommend for players out there, because again, we're trying to meet the criteria of, like, easy solo farm, also has a good set of perks, and you know, doesn't have a massive drop table of like 1,000 different enemies. So we came up with Sulphurous Roar. This has Shirking Flames and Enchanted. The third perk is Mortal Empower if you do want to upgrade it to 600 gear score, and it drops from Betaika the Burned One, who again is also located in Brimstone Sands. Only just over 30k HP on this one. So yeah, with some good luck, you should hopefully be able to get Sulphurous Roar to drop. Warden's Answer is a bow that we showcased earlier on in the video at the beginning. It has Vorpal, Penetrating Rapid Shot, and the third perk it upgrades to is Enchanted, which is a pretty solid set of perks actually. Not best in slot, but not bad. And it drops from Warden of Setet, who again is a pretty easy solo farm located in the Brimstone Sands region. Finally, on the weapon side of things, we have the Musket. This one is called Ironbark Blaster. It has Enchanted, Keen, and Keenly Jagged, so pretty solid set of perks again. And this one drops from 2 different enemies actually, but I can confirm I went out and farmed Broadpaw myself just to see if it could happen, because it's only level 40, so I didn't think it was possible. But I can confirm Broadpaw, even a level 40 bear, will drop you the Ironbark Blaster, which is definitely not a bad one, and even, you know, seriously worth considering upgrading to 600 gear score once you get the expertise for it. Now, on the armor side of things, it does get a little bit more tricky, as there's actually not that many great pieces of armor that drop in the open world from bosses that are easily farmable. One of the piece of criteria that I've also gone for with this guide is bearing in mind the usual sort of equip loads we see. So with a light equip load, you're usually going to have a medium chest, and then everything else is going to be light. In a medium load, typically you want to go for a heavy helmet and a heavy chest, medium gloves, light legs, and medium boots. And of course, with full heavy, every single piece of gear is heavy. So that does mean that we won't show any medium helmets, and we actually won't show any medium legs either. But again, if you stick around until the end of this video, I will show you guys the process for how we sort of found all these items and how you can go through and look for your own items as well. Now, on the jewelry side of things, and specifically with amulets, we're going to list a few different options here that should hopefully work for a bunch of different builds, starting with Matt's Blessing, which is a good amulet for healers. Now, one thing that you do have to bear in mind is the health upgrade does come in at 600 gear score, so for like the good chunk of time, including with my own character right now, it will only be at 590 until you get the sort of expertise to upgrade it. So it only has Divine and Slash protection, but I still think it's a good one to farm out, and when you get it to 600 expertise, it becomes a very nice amulet, especially in PvP as well. This works pretty well against all those Greatswords. This one drops from the Judge of Purity. We talked about this a little bit earlier. He also has the shield and then sits right across from the Judge of Sin, so there's a potential double farm you can go for here. The next amulet we're going to talk about is Requiem Pendant, which again is a bit of a weird one. It's got focus and dexterity, but health does come in at the start, so this is going to be targeted for dexterity users. So if dexterity is a good part of your build, you might want to consider going for this and just sort of eat the fact that you're going to have like 9 useless focus until you can upgrade into something better, because health and empowered is a pretty strong set of perks. And this one drops from Sai Wang the Immovable, who is close to Dao Shen over in Shattered Mountain. So again, another pretty easy farm to go for if you can handle taking 9 focus into your build for temporarily. It's got the perks are pretty damn good for it. As with the Requiem Pendant, we also have Treasure of the Pit, and this one is Intelligence with Strength. So if you are a mage and you don't mind having a little bit of strength in your build, or potentially the other way around, Health and Fortified Recovery are 2 pretty solid perks. Fortified also being okay at 600 gear score, but by the time you get to 600 expertise, hopefully we'll have found something better. This one drops from Pit Lord Dahi. You know, we've seen this guy quite a few times now, so definitely going to be a good one to farm for all of these different drops that we can get. Moving on to rings, and the first ring we're going to talk about is the Heart of Daleo. This has thrust damage and refreshing evasion, with the third perk being Hearty. So in order to get full value out of this one, you're going to need that 150 dexterity, or you're going to need a medium equip load, because both of those give you access to the triple dodge. But if you're in light or heavy without 150 dex, you are going to want that Hearty. This ring drops from Daleo of Hawa, who is located again in the Brimstone Sands up in the north. There's actually 2 cats right next to each other, and the other one that we're going to talk about right now is Merciful Hepu, who has the Heart of Hepu. Now this is probably going to be a better all-rounder for a lot of people, as it has Constitution and Hearty, so that's like great for a good chunk of builds there. Slash damage also coming in handy for people using Greataxes, Greatswords, Sword and Shield, and Hatchet. And just like we mentioned, this one drops from Merciful Hepu, who is right next to Daleo, so there's a potential good double farm here. Taking both on at the same time is going to be kind of tricky, but I can confirm we can do it, and the respective rings that they drop are both pretty damn good. Now, I wasn't really sure whether to include this in the video, but I thought we'd do it anyway. It is the Ball Hoop, which doesn't seem to have an icon here in game, but allegedly it can drop. I've heard from the comments. It is a quest mob that drops this called Round Shot Ronaldo. We'll talk about that in a second. It has Hearty, fire damage, and upgrades with leeching, so pretty good for fire mages and potentially those using like Blunderbus or Musket as well, as you do have quite a bit of fire damage coming from certain abilities with those weapons. As we mentioned, Roundshot Ronaldo is actually a quest mob, so in order to get this mob to spawn, you're going to need to follow a quest chain which starts in Reekwater. It's called Shivering Timbers, and because New World Database is just an absolute best in slot website, of course it does have the quest on here, and it also has the quest chain that follows it as well. So I'm currently right now on Queen's Gambit, but you guys will have to start off with an expanding threat to get all the way down to Shivering Timbers. And then you can spawn the mob, and what you do is you complete the quest, cancel it, and then get the quest back again so you can get the mob to spawn again. So it is a bit of a pain in the butt to farm, but if this ring does look particularly good for you, you'll have to start off with an expanding threat, which comes from this quest giver here in Reekwater. So again, this is all going to be covered in the sort of New World Database written guide. You'll be able to see it all there and click on these links for yourself. But bear in mind that this one, like I say, is a little bit more of a sort of tricky farm to go for to get the Baal Hoop. Lastly, on the earring side of things here, we've got a few different options. This first one is a Strength Earring with Refreshing Toast and Refreshing. You don't want to upgrade this to 600 gear score because that third perk there is just not really worth it for strength users. This one drops from Adjorjan, who is located in Eden Grove. It's I think it's in one of the caves, but we'll check with the footage that we'll go over here. Actually, that looks like it's up on top of the mountains. But Starstone Remembrance Charm, again, like Refreshing Toast is pretty good and refreshing. Everybody can benefit from that as well. Use your potions more often, use your abilities more often. The only thing that lets it down is the gem, but potentially you might be able to replace that with something else. Invoked by Her Two Lands is basically a dexterity equivalent of the Starstone Remembrance earring that we saw, and this one drops from High Priest of the Twin Doors, which is a crazy name for a mob. But again, this one should be solo farmable. It's only got 40k HP, and it's located in the far end of the wall over here. Lastly, as a little bit of an alternative option, we have the Tarot's Ritual Trinket, which has Refreshing Focus and upgrades with Healthy Toast. Focus is not really that good of a perk, but I wanted to include this because Healthy Toast can be pretty handy for some mages, and I guess maybe you could find some way to use this as a healer. Sadly, there are no good healer earrings that I can find that reliably drop in the game, so you're probably gonna have to go for something crafted there. But this earring drops from Kilgaran, who is located here in Ebonscale Reach. So if that's something that looks interesting to you, then that is also another earring that we could potentially recommend. Right, so that wraps up all of the items that we wanted to cover in this video. Again, I do want to stress that these items are not really best in slot. You are going to find better stuff later on in the game, but if you're a fresh level 60 player and you're just looking for mobs that you can sort of, you only get a few hours to play or a few minutes to play in the day, you can go over and try and farm some of these guys, maybe even leave yourself AFK until they respawn and come back in. I think most of the mobs should respawn in under 10 minutes. One thing that I did say we would cover is how you can sort of put this video together yourself if you wanted to do your own research, and that is using, of course, New World Database. Now, for full disclosure, we are partnered with New World Database, but it is an incredibly good website and tool for finding out information about New World. So what I was doing is I was going to the database section of New World, and then I was searching for the relevant sort of weapons. So if we take a Greatsword, for example, I want it to be a named Greatsword, I want it to be tier 5, I want it to be legendary, and you can actually list the acquisition method here as well. So greatswords that come from PvP, greatswords that come from crafting, greatswords that come from quests. So I was doing other at the time of this video, but since then the site owner has added in this global name drop option here as well, which seems to be working actually. So yeah, other was the option that I was using here. But I think you guys probably want to go for global name drop, and then you can click on the respective item, and I assume this means it drops somewhere globally. Yeah, that looks to be the case. However, I don't see Jupiter's Judgment in here, so maybe we are still going to go for the other option. Yeah, and then we can click on the respective items, and then we can go to dropped by and find out, 50, like this is too much HP, I wouldn't include this in the video, but you guys get the idea of how I was doing this. You could also, if you wanted to specifically target something, like you really want a greatsword with enchanted, for example, you could go ahead and put the enchanted option in there, and then it'll show you various greatswords, and you can click on them and get more info. Bloodsucker's Greatsword is something that I don't think we actually included, but it is very, very popular for people out there. As one that you can go to farm for your sort of solo content. Right, I think this video has probably gone on for a little bit too long now, but nonetheless, if you guys found this one useful, make sure you go ahead and click the like button. If there's any other items that you want to share in the comments down below and give tips and tricks to other players, I love to see it when you guys do that sort of stuff, so let me know in the comments if there's anything that I missed. I know a few people are probably going to be talking about the Bloodsucker's Greatsword, but there's so many people who have covered that. I wanted to present something a little bit different. I do want to stress, make sure you do your quests in the Brimstone Sands. Even as a fresh level 60 PC player, you can do them solo, and they give some good rewards. You will find better items as you sort of progress and as you go into dungeons, but nonetheless, I do hope this video was useful. If you want to see more stuff like this, make sure you go ahead, click the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.